afterwards, I imagine, because we can have a video file.
Yeah, we'll just pretend it's Michiel and I and Alice talking.
Yeah. But are we going to see the attendees? No, right? No, they're not going to share video, but there is a list of attendees.
Okay, hold on, wait, guys. We're live.
Are we live?
All right.
We're broadcasting, but just give us a second. I'm going to go on mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. We've clearly done this before.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking everybody's seeing how the sausages are made.
You're right.
But if we are live, then I guess we may as well start 2 minutes early, which means we'll have more minutes for questions, so that's good. So welcome everybody to our live booth at our virtual booth. It's a very unusual Black Hat. I'm Alice Collins, Communications and Social Media Manager at HackerOne. I know we promised you an AMA with our CTO and co-founder Alex Rice, but today we're very lucky to be joined by both Alex and Michiel Prins, one of our other co-founders. So I've got some questions here that have been pre-submitted over the last few days, but if anybody does have any live questions, then there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, so you can just submit your questions there, and we'll try to get to as many as possible over the next 30 to 40 minutes. So, Black Hat, biggest hacker conference of the year. This is actually my first year at Black Hat, and I didn't think I would be doing it or attending it from my living room in West London, but here we are. How many Black Hats have you two both attended now? You must be veterans.
Black Hats, I don't know. First Vegas pilgrimage for me was DEF CON 13 in 2004. So last year they had it at Alexis Park. I wasn't fancy enough to get into Black Hat back then, so it was a DEF CON only trip for me. It was probably a few years after that for Black Hat.
Wow, I feel like a baby. I think my first time was in 2012, and it was also DEF CON. It was not Black Hat. I didn't know about. Well, I knew about Black Hat, but DEF CON was this thing I had heard about, and I'd never really been. It felt really far in Las Vegas. It's really far, and we just went 2012, and every year since.
You may feel like a baby, but I had no idea that A Rice was so old. Hopefully next year we'll all be back in Vegas. I would love to attend my first in-person one. So I know this is a question probably everybody's asking at the moment, but how have the last 6 months been for you, for your team, and for HackerOne? A Rice, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I like being an early adopter of most things. So I was one of the first few hundred people in California to get COVID, then recovered from COVID. Then our twins started walking in March. So it's been about 5 months now of kids who have never walked outside of the house. They think this is their whole existence. I'm sure that's going to be some type of trauma that comes back out when they're teenagers. I'll be paying for that one later. So partly, I'm really impressed with how well I've been able to convince everyone that I'm holding my shit together. And this is a PG stream. I should watch my language. And then for HackerOne, it's been really powerful watching how well the model works when it's how unnecessary being in a physical presence is for a lot of what we do, and in many cases how much more effective it is after the fact. We've seen a large increase in engagement from hackers that have more time, more creativity on their hands, and are doing it. Like last week alone, hackers earned $3.4 million on the platform. It's just incredible. So I've been trying to look for some silver linings in the whole thing. And hackers are getting paid a lot more during COVID on bounty programs than they were beforehand, and that's the one silver lining I managed to pull out.
Well, we'll make sure we focus on that then rather than all the bad news. What about you, Michiel?
Yeah, I feel like I'm finally getting the hang of this remote work or working from home situation and how to best do that. And yeah, it seems like in the early days when we all started working from home, It felt like you could play like Zoom bingo with all the words of, can you see my screen? Can you hear me? Oh, there's an echo on the line. And I think finally everyone seems to be able to figure out how it's all working and how to be productive.
We've nearly figured it out on this webinar. Maybe by the end of it, we'll be very confident and have it sorted. Okay, well, I'm going to split up the questions a bit between you now. Guys, can you kick us off with telling us what trends you're seeing in the industry, the infosec industry as a whole, as a result of the pandemic? Do you have any predictions for the lasting impacts this is going to have on the industry?
Yeah, kind of the quick takeaways for the vast majority of it, it's really the same threats with a new flavor, which shouldn't be surprising to anyone who's been involved in this for too long, right? The phishing lures take on a new thing. The goals change a bit, but the threats are largely the same. So a lot of lessons from beforehand are still relevant, and we shouldn't be losing track of those. But we need to be just aware of what the topical attack of the week is. And that's very much elections and COVID and social issues at the same time. What really changed about the pandemic is the increase in work from home attack surface. It's really incredible how quickly people are, for lack of a better description, accelerating a transformation that was probably going to take a lot longer and be a lot more thoughtful and a lot more secure organically. So people are starting to assess just how do they get a handle on all of the new attack surface that's out there? How are they patching endpoints that are at home? How are they handling shared devices? What does incident response look like in a remote fashion? And that's the second thing you should really pay attention to, is just, do you have a up-to-date understanding of what your current attack surface looks like in a remote from home environment? And some exercises around home IR are a great place to start there. And then third, this is a little bit broad, but been really impressed with how quickly many security leaders have shifted to focusing on empathy for the users involved in this, and who are trying to get a job done, who are trying to do their best, while not just dealing with work from home, but dealing with a pandemic, dealing with realities of systemic racism and Black Lives Matter movements, and just there's a lot going on that are all front and top of mind for people that are trying to do their jobs and trying to get work done. And so those security leaders that are recognizing that reality and empathizing with users and figuring out, as good part of the business, of how to get work done securely, I hope that's the trend that we keep seeing going into the future.
Yeah, I hope so. Is there anything that stayed the same that surprised you?
Yeah, the threats are the same. That's not surprising though. That Black Hat is on is a surprise. I didn't think I'd be a Black Hat or at Black Hat this year. That's the most pleasant surprise, is that we somehow managed to make this still happen.
Yeah, that is. Well, it's a testament to all of the field marketing people who can still put it on, put on webinars like this. Well, taking a step back for a moment, we may have some viewers who are less familiar with HackerOne or with crowdsourced security in general. Michiel, can you give us a quick overview of HackerOne and the founding story?
Yeah. So it kind of came from this feeling that security research had been oppressed for far too long. And there are many factors at play there, but most importantly, it was like concerns around legality, and that made it often unsafe for hackers to perform security research with the goal of improving the system security. So like the vendor they would try to help either would ignore their very helpful input to improve the security of a system, or worse, they would call in the FBI. Like 10 years ago, you would go to jail for like finding a vulnerability in your bank's software systems. Today, hackers can earn big bounties by responsibly reporting these vulnerabilities to banks like Goldman Sachs. So it's a very different world. And before HackerOne, I was a pen tester, and I experienced this firsthand. Like, we would find software vulnerabilities in like all sorts of third-party software that our customers were using, and then you want to do the right thing. You want to tell this vendor, this third-party software vendor, about a vulnerability so that it can get fixed. But finding the right person to disclose these vulnerabilities to is very hard. And like a lot of them basically never responded. Like even if you did find someone to reach out to, they would not get back to you. They wouldn't acknowledge it, or they wouldn't even fix it. And we knew that we weren't the only ones out there. We knew there were so many more hackers out there that find vulnerabilities every day. But for many, the risk they'd be exposing themselves to for trying to report a vulnerability, it just led them to remain quiet. Lots of hackers just never tried because the risk was too high. That meant that there was like a lot of untapped potential out there that was just getting unnecessarily silenced in a way. So we created HackerOne as this function to function as a safe place where hackers and organizations can collaborate, and where the human creativity and the persistence that hackers have is actually valued. And that leads us to, we empower the world to build trust in our digital society.
What would you say are some of the benefits of using hackers against more sort of traditional or sort of technological methods, for example, scanners?
Yeah, like what you see with hackers is they share two key traits that malicious attackers have. They both have creativity and persistence. And if you take a look at a lot of the other traditional solutions like vulnerability scanners or any sort of automation or AI or ML or what you want to call it, they don't have creativity. I haven't seen an AI with creativity. And they also don't have the persistence. And if you're facing a real threat against malicious attackers, what you can see from the hacker community is that they actually do have that creativity to find the vulnerabilities that are unknown. Whereas if you look at traditional solutions like scanners and those kinds of things, they kind of are more like the rear view mirror of security. So they kind of look backwards about the things that worked yesterday. Whereas a hacker looks forward. They think creatively, they're persistent. If something doesn't work, they'll try to figure out a way to get around it. They've tried to figure out a way to get around the limitations.
Yeah, we do. We love that about hackers here. Right, kind of moving on to the customer side, what would you say are some of the common challenges that customers looking to work with hackers are facing when they first come to you, to HackerOne?
I think I'll take that a little bit better of like after a little bit further. Once they've decided to work with hackers, what are the biggest challenge that they see? The security industry's put a lot of time and effort into solving really challenging problems that feel like we've made a lot of progress, right? You might be an organization that over the last few years has invested heavily in vulnerability management, and you're finally starting to get green reports back on your scanning and your automation. You've been doing your annual pen tests, and it's getting less and less findings every year. You're starting to feel a bit more confident, but you've had a few incidents or perspectives or paranoia that's wondering you to believe what else is out there. And without fail, in the first week of asking hackers to assess an attack surface, there is a mountain of ways in that get created, exposures and vulnerabilities and things that all your automation and diligence and best efforts were missing in the past. Which on one hand is great. That's what we're trying to get to. But the biggest challenge with that is how do we do that, manage that influx of learning in a controlled, responsible manner. We want to make sure that there are stable vulnerability management practices in place that we can feed into. We want to make sure that the security team has a productive relationship with the development team, because we are inevitably going to be creating work for your digital backlog, and your CIO needs to be on the same page with that. There are going to be inevitably in the first few weeks just systemic issues identified that are these facepalm moments where you're like, oh, how do we miss that? We need to go invest in this area to make that class issue go away entirely before we expand. So the biggest challenge that anyone hits when they first start working is hackers will tell you a lot in a very short period of time. And we have to be good partners with our customers to translate that into more strategic roadmaps that they can bring back to their businesses to help make meaningful progress on security rather than just being overwhelmed on day one.
Yeah, it's definitely still maybe outside of the US a little bit more, still some nervousness of working with hackers. We've seen it fairly well adopted in the US from startups to government and big corporations. But do you think we are starting to see wider adoption worldwide? And sort of, where are you seeing the main growth in hacker-powered security and companies accepting it?
It's a great question. Hacker-powered security really follows the security maturity curve that you see at an organization, right? If you haven't done anything for security, starting with hackers is probably the wrong place to start. Or if you have major exposures that you're aware of, coming to hackers to say like, hey, how would you break into me is not a productive activity. So the practice naturally follows those organizations that are a little bit ahead of the curve on cybersecurity maturity or have an ambition to be ahead of the curve. So when you look at public programs and those that are really leaning into the practice, they are those organizations that are either digital native or further along in their digital transformation, and they feel like they've got a better handle on security, and they're really looking for that hacker's perspective on what am I missing. So it starts with big tech companies, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, then it moved into those finance early adopters and government early adopters that are a little bit more digital friendly than others like Goldman Sachs and GM and the DoD. And now you're starting to see it branch out further to others who are following that natural digital transformation curve, and their security practices are catching up as a result. And then one pattern that we're seeing is that no matter how large your organization is or where what your long tail of tech debt looks like, there are always a few pockets of more modern, more advanced, more secure parts of your infrastructure where applying the practice in that very targeted manner works really well. About 80% of the programs that we run today are private, and they're usually private exactly for that reason. The organization is simply not ready to get the hacker perspective on their entire attack surface, but everybody has a few areas, whether it's a new area of digital investment or a part of their infrastructure that's moving to the cloud or something else, where it's like, we have all hands on deck and all eyes on this thing right now. We are investing here. We want to make sure we've got that hacker perspective from day one. So that we're actually seeing very broad adoption of, if you set that aside from the public programs. And then I would say the countries that are a little bit ahead of the curve there are, again, those that are a little bit more digital friendly, digital forward, places like the UK, Singapore, Japan, Germany, France. The Netherlands actually has a ton of responsible disclosure programs. They were one of the early adopters there. And so it's very, very global at this point, but more than country boundaries, what matters is how far the businesses in that country are along, just really embracing that everything is going to be software, everything is going to be digital in the future, and that means we need a security posture to match.
Yeah, and now obviously we're all technology companies, with everybody having to offer digital offerings in the pandemic. A question for you, Michiel. Bug Bounty has often complemented pen testing with HackerOne's programs and increasingly blurring the line there. How does pen testing differ from Bug Bounty, and how do they work together?
Yeah, like if you take a look at really at the heart, the difference is scale. Because if you take a look at pen testing, it was created or invented in the past millennium. It's been around for a really long time. And it was created in the era of waterfall software development. So not many people still follow the waterfall methodology to rapidly produce new software. So it's kind of like a methodology for assessing the security of a system that's a little bit outdated with how fast and how quick development teams are moving today. So where you see Bug Bounty really complement pen testing is that it can give you the scale to move fast. Like, you don't have to bottleneck anymore on pen testing, and like it simply just doesn't make economical sense to have a pen test going on every single day, right? So that just doesn't really work. So what you can do with bug bounty is you have this very large community of hackers that you can rely on, but it's kind of always on. It's always there. It's always looking. Everything that gets shipped into production, there's always someone watching out for changes and trying to find, to poke holes in it and trying to find vulnerabilities. And this can give you that bridge between, if you do like an annual pen test or maybe even twice annual pen test, this gives you that bridge between when you're still shipping lots and lots of new code, but it's not getting tested because your next pen test doesn't happen for the next 6 months. So in that period, you have the ability to leverage that hacker community to find everything that slips through the cracks, essentially.
Thank you. So moving on to maybe the slightly more juicy topic of the bugs themselves, and what would you say has been the most significant bug that you've seen surface through HackerOne over the past 7 years or so?
Oh my goodness, it's hard to pick. I'll do a plug for our Hacktivity feature here. If you hackerone.com/hacktivity, or you can find it link from the top. It's a feed of everything that the hacker and the company have both agreed to disclose. You'll find about 6,000 vulnerabilities there, which is just an unprecedented. It's just a treasure trove of knowledge. I check it multiple times a week, and it's fascinatingly informative reading to go check out. It's also a strange byproduct of this practice is that there is so much transparency, and that once you've accepted the fact that like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have vulnerabilities, everybody has vulnerabilities, sharing it so that we can all learn becomes really powerful. So it's hard to pick one, and I'd encourage you to, even if you just went to the current top feed of vulnerabilities there, I guarantee you'll find something interesting. My personal favorites, Michiel and I were talking about this before. I bet he's going to have a similar answer. Are ones that have an impact on the physical world. I have one in particular that the DoD disclosed a few years ago that was from their Army Corps of Engineers after they launched their disclosure program. It was a industrial control system vulnerability that very much had real world impact on our water supply, and those type of things are just really powerful to see just how much our digital and physical worlds start to blur together.
What about you, Michiel?
Yeah, like in terms of like the most significant bug, it's probably like the bugs that affect millions and millions of users and typically user data. So this can range from like the most benign looking issue, like a developer leaves an API key somewhere unattended and someone finds it, to the most creative change of various low severity vulnerabilities and therefore creating a very big impact. But just like Arise, I think personally I'm like a big fan of the bugs that have a physical impact. And I remember one, a really cool one. It was a couple of years ago. It was during Black Hat. We did this live hacking event with one of our customers in the aviation space. And they had brought this whole system that was essentially like a simulation of what would happen during a flight. And it was an entertainment system for like on-demand video and those kinds of things in an airplane. And there was a hacker who found a vulnerability that was basically able to bridge from this like entertainment system all the way to more like airplane controls, like raising alarm sounds, but also potentially dropping oxygen masks and like triggering a lot of like scary moments potentially for passengers on the plane. And this is like that very interesting bridge between, okay, there's a vulnerability here. You could potentially leak data, but really this has a physical impact. Like now there's a physical movement happening in the plane because there was a vulnerability. And I think those are usually the most fun to learn about.
Yeah, from a comms point of view, those are the stories that we like telling. Maybe it's not necessarily going to have the most impact or even be the biggest payout, but anything that you know your ordinary person can just understand always works well for a story for PR. So next question that we have is, Michiel, maybe you can answer this as a hacker yourself. Could you offer any advice to hackers who want to get started hacking, especially now we've all got so much time in our hands with the pandemic?
Yeah, I I'm just gonna, first off, I'm gonna repeat A Rice with his plug about Hacktivity. This is a treasure trove of past vulnerabilities that have been found by hackers, and they're all disclosed. There's 6,000 or more of them, and these are all lessons learned. So personally, as a hacker myself, I take a look at it pretty frequently, and I always learn something. Like I learn a new technique from some other hacker that just tried it a little bit differently, and I had just hadn't thought of it myself that way. That's an interesting way to expand your existing knowledge. We also offer something called Hacker 101. It's an online video course where we walk you through like basic concepts of hacking. And the cool part there is you can actually test the theory and in practice with a CTF. So we've designed a CTF that goes along with the whole online course. And then you can kind of test like, okay, I learned a lot of stuff from this video. Can I actually apply this in reality here? So we have a lot of simulated environments where you can exploit vulnerabilities and perform the capture the flag.
Yeah, I'm very untechnical, but I've previously tried to learn hacking. I found very much like groups and meetups very useful, maybe not so much right now, although they're still happening online, I'm sure. But we have a lot of hackers who also YouTube videos and tutorials and things. So worth checking out them, following them from our Twitter. Before we go, I think we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. Let's talk a bit more about Black Hat. What are you missing most from a physical Black Hat?
Oh, the dehydration and the sleep deprivation. That really fills out the experience for me. So I'm gonna try to do the best that I can to stay dehydrated or get dehydrated and not sleep much. We'll see how I do.
But you've got 2 small children, so that shouldn't be too much of a challenge, right?
Yeah, for me, it's like I miss the heat, like just this walking around from hotel to hotel to venue in Vegas. It's very interesting. There's all this heat, and then suddenly you're in air conditioning again, and every hotel has different smells and perfumes that they spray around, and it's every year I just have that memory, and this year there's nothing.
Yeah, I'm pretty gutted that this was going to be my first year and I can't go. Although everybody tells me, oh, you'll hate it. It's too hot and it's too busy and you don't sleep. So maybe that's fair enough.
I just thought that looking forward to, five more steps before I'm in the AC again.
If we think beyond just, the fun, the parties, the heat, the drinking, what talks are you kind of most looking forward to, being able to really give your full attention to at a virtual Black Hat?
Right after this, I'm going to, when security research is a crime, Naomi at the EFF is talking about a few upcoming cases and the overdue need for CFAA reform. Just one of those topics that it impacts us all of us a lot more than we realize, and impacts security researchers the most of all. So I'm glad to see the EFF continue to carry the torch there. We're checking that out in 5 minutes.
Michiel, are you going to be joining any talks? Checking it out?
I was actually I was looking forward to James Kettle's talk, which actually I think was happening just as we were getting ready to hop on this AMA. So I'll have to figure out how to watch the recording. But I always find James's talks really, really insightful. He's he approaches it with a super hacker mindset, so that's why I probably enjoyed them. But he's been on this kick for a couple of years now with web cache poisoning. And it's just very interesting because web cache is like one of the oldest parts of the web, and he still manages to like blow new life into it from a security risk perspective. And I just always find his techniques very, very interesting to watch.
Yeah, whenever I ask a hacker, whose research inspires you, James Kettle's name always comes up.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a virtual conference this year. We can't, go and support James in person, but is there anything about virtual conferences that you are enjoying?
I love trying to guess who's wearing pants. So yeah, y'all can play a game of that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, you do.
Well, make you prove it. Yeah, at HackerOne, we're also having to run our conferences virtually as well, and live hacking events, which are all about getting hackers together, all coming together in Las Vegas, Los Angeles, London, wherever. Those are now having to be moved online. Michiel, how are those working out? How do they differ? Are we still seeing great results from them anyway?
Yeah, like we actually have hosted a few virtual live hacking events now. So they've been going very well. And every single time we do one, they get better. Even before the pandemic, we were already talking about like, how do we take these events virtual? I guess the pandemic kind of forced our hand, so we had to do it. But we figured like it's of course great to do a physical event where you bring everybody together. It has a couple of benefits, like if there's hardware to hack, like the airplane system that we talked about, for instance, was an example there. The logistics are a lot more easy when it's a physical event. But when the target is more like a web application, we always felt bringing everybody to one place is you can't do that for everyone. There's always like some people can't make the time, or the schedule doesn't work out for them, or there might be visa related issues for why they might not be able to come into the country that we're hosting it in. So this virtual way of doing the event has also made it a lot more accessible for a lot of different other hackers. I would say the events have been going very well. And it's still like this time that people get together. We host live streams. There's a chat going on in Discord where everyone is like very, very engaged, and everyone's sharing pictures from how they're hacking from their office and what their setup is. And some people get visited by their pets, and they post pictures of their pets in their house helping them hack. So it's all virtual, but it still feels very much like a physical event, and you're very, very engaged and connected with everybody attending.
I've seen some fun games of Pictionary going on at one of them, cybersecurity themed, of course. Okay, well, I think we've got 1 minute left, so just last question, bit of a plug for us. Rice, I hear that HackerOne is running its own virtual version of its annual Security at Conference this year. Can you tell us a bit more about that and what we can expect?
I get to close out with my favorite plug. Yeah, so Security At is really a conference that we started 4 years ago now that really focuses on the need for collaboration and third-party involvement in security programs. The Security At name really pays homage to one of those basic security practices of just having an open line of communication with the outside, and an often neglected and overlooked part of our security programs today that I believe is one of the best sources of value if you can invest in it and really make it a core part of your program, so you're not always just looking inside your walls. It's a great day full of customers sharing lessons learned about security lessons that they learned from somebody outside of their organization, and how they go about fostering that collaboration. In the past, they've been phenomenal, and I'm really looking forward to the increased engagement we'll get this year from everyone being able to do it virtually versus having to get on a germ box in the sky to fly to San Francisco. So I hope we'll see some of y'all there for our 4th annual Security At.
Yeah, well, everybody can keep an eye on our social media feeds to take a look at that. We've also released a call for papers as well, and those details are on LinkedIn and on the website if you want to take a look at those and have got something to submit. Well, Michiel, Rice, thank you so much for joining us and answering these questions. I hope you enjoy the rest of Black Hat from the comfort of your own home, and everybody else, I hope you enjoy the rest of the day as well.
Yeah, I'll see everyone at Naomi's When Security Research is a Crime talk starting 1 minute ago. See you there.